Pakistan Today, 10th of October 2023, could the China-Russian partnership pose a threat to the United States? After supporting the Hamas strikes, Russia and China have launched a new front in their all-out battle against the United States. In terms of land area, Russia is the largest nation on Earth. With a more than 17.2 million square kilometers of land, it makes up about 11% of the global continent. However, China is a large nation, second only to Russia in land area, with more than 9.6 million square kilometer, or 6.3% of the planet's surface. As a result, the combined size of these two nations is 17.3% of the planet's surface. China has the most significant military force in the world, numbering over 2 million. With almost 900,000, Russia ranks sixth after North Korea, China, India, and the United States. They are, therefore, included in the large group. After the United States, China has the second largest economy globally, with Russia at number 11. Both nations are sizable in every way. Both of them are nuclear powers and are regarded as solid nations worldwide. Other than that, a boundary unites the two countries. Both nations have had a border constantly at war for generations. Their relationship began in the 17th century, during which the Russian Empire grew and the Qing dynasty ruled China. They frequently engaged in barter skirmishes. In 1689, the first official treaty was signed. China influenced a significant portion of Russia's Far East. The Qing dynasty's hold over China started to loosen in the ensuing decades. Therefore, it was exploited by outside forces, primarily Russia. Following that, China entered the humiliation century, 1839 to 1949. China was involved in domestic wars and conflicts with Japan, Britain, France, and other Western countries. Russia started pressuring China to cede the Outer Manchuria territory. In the agreements of 1858 and 1860, China unwillingly relinquished Manchuria to avert a new war. Following the acquisition of the region outside of Manchuria, China no longer has direct access to the Sea of Japan because of Russia. Later on, this region showed to be crucial strategically for Russia. This area now houses the two biggest cities in the Russian Far East. Following this, Vladivostok will be home to the Russian Pacific Fleet, allowing Russia to access the Pacific. Subsequent Chinese leaders never forgot these accords. These are known as unequal treaties. China gained independence during the Cold War between the USSR and the USA in 1949. Despite having similar ideologies, China and Russia disagreed because of how they saw communism. Mao Zedong, who founded China, was adamantly against earlier treaties. He desired to undo such compromises. China and Russia were designated to be separated by the Amur and Ussuri rivers. There are numerous islands spread out between these vast rivers. According to Russia, the Chinese side's riverbanks defined the border. This implied that Russia owned every island in the river. However, China maintained that the wall is situated amid the rivers. Due to China's claim to Zhenbao Island in the Ussuri River, there was a conflict between Chinese and Russian soldiers in 1969 due to this disagreement. At the time, there was concern over the possibility of nuclear war. Due to boundary conflicts, relations between China and the USSR remained unstable in the following years. However, upon Mao's passing, these ties started to improve somewhat. 1991, not long before the USSR fell apart. An agreement resolved a border issue between China and Russia that dates back to 1860. Zhenbao Island's claim by China was also acknowledged. The most trivial conflicts between China and Russia were entirely handled. The Bards dispute was resolved, and cordial relations between the two nations started. The Treaty of Friendly Cooperation and Good Neighborliness was signed by the two nations in 2001. It was a purported military, economic, and strategic accord. Before the deal, The Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established in 2001 by China, Russia, and several states in Central Asia. Numerous bilateral trade agreements were signed following that. China also began purchasing Russian energy and military hardware. Russia seized control of Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. Following that, Russia was subject to several economic penalties from the USA and the West. Russia had to strengthen its ties with China to evade the consequences of the sanctions, as China was a sizable market, and Russia needed to send its goods elsewhere. When U.S. sanctions were placed on Chinese technology businesses in 2018, the relationship between China and Russia grew more robust. The two were expected to become closer since they shared the USA as a rival. Presidents Vladimir Putin of Russia and Xi Jinping of China met at the Beijing Winter Olympics opening ceremony in February 2022. Following that, both nations proclaimed their friendship and no-limit friendship in their joint declaration. The visit was significant in many respects because Russia invaded Ukraine shortly after. China likewise refused to hold Russia accountable for this strike. China's position was instead regarded as Russia's. A motion to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council was brought before the UN General Assembly following the outbreak of hostilities. China abstained from the resolution's vote. China is supporting Russia in the war in Ukraine, albeit indirectly and only diplomatically. Russia developed trade with China to maintain its war campaign and avoid Western influence. Bilateral trade rose by 30% above 2021 in 2022, the year the conflict began, according to a report. China supplies Russia with semiconductors. China receives inexpensive gas and oil from Russia in exchange. In addition, both nations are developing de-dollarization policies. Both countries are thinking about using their currency for one-on-one transactions. According to Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, multiple Chinese component types were discovered among the Russian weapons that were apprehended. China has been alerted about this by the USA. However, China has refuted the claims that it has given Russia any weaponry. In addition to this, the United States and its allies have additional cause for concern regarding Russia and China's increasing proximity. That is to say, Russia has barely been affected by the sanctions after the war because it is too busy avoiding them and boosting commerce with China. The United States and its allies are also concerned that if Russia wins this conflict, China will also be inspired to invade Taiwan. China and Russia will very certainly be included in the defense pact because there are several areas where the two nations diverge. That will prevent them from approaching too closely. First, China's and Russia's approaches to Central Asia diverge. Given that every country in Central Asia was a member of the former USSR, the area is seen as Russia's backyard. China has also been actively boosting commercial activity in this region recently, but Russia still holds much sway here. Russia doesn't appear too pleased with China's increasing influence over Central Asia. India is the third largest nation in the region, which may be another source of distinction. Both nations have different policies regarding India. There is a boundary issue between China and India and a frosty relationship between the two countries. India and Russia have a long history of diplomatic and defense cooperation. Russia is an ally of India,